We are back for a new year. 2026 in the United States is wasting no time inserting itself into all kinds of new chaos. Donald Trump is on the world stage to begin the year with war in his eyes and oil in his pants. The United States just bombed Venezuela over the weekend, captured its president Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and now Donald Trump says the United States is going to take over the country and run it ourselves and get the oil flowing again. And if you think any of this has to do with freedom or with drugs, you're out of your mind. And I will just state the obvious just to get it out of the way. Nicolas Maduro is a terrible person. He was absolutely a dictator. There's no one disputing that. He rigged elections in the country. He crushed his opposition. He ran the country into the fucking ground. People were starving, protesting, fleeing the country, and his government just responded with more violence and crackdowns. But let's be honest with ourselves here. The United States government did not just wake up one day and suddenly grow a conscience. This guy was, yeah, he was a tyrant, but he was in power for over a decade. If this whole operation, bombing him and removing him from the country, bringing him to the United States, was all of a sudden just about saving people from a brutal regime, we would have done something years ago when the country was actually falling apart in real time. So this has nothing to do with morality. It's all about the optics and it's all about the timing. And the timing just so happens to line up with oil prices, U.S. corporate interests, and a regime that stopped playing ball with American companies. And the official narrative came in right away from the top of the line. We had to go all in. Venezuela is a narco-terrorist state. They're pushing drugs. They're flooding the United States with cocaine. That's the line, but that's a cover story. Let's talk about what actually happened here. Because for months leading up to this, the United States was already carrying out military strikes off Venezuela's coast. But they weren't bombing these big warships filled full of bricks of cocaine. They weren't hitting military targets. They were blowing up these tiny speedboats, smuggling boats, fishing vessels. It was not some kind of naval war. It was drone strikes against boats the size of your Uber. And every time they say the same thing: suspected drug traffickers, cocaine routes, narco targets. And that was the branding from the get go. But what it really was a soft launch of the invasion we saw this weekend. A little test run, a little PR warm up. Hey, look, we're already fighting drugs down here. We might as well go in and take the whole damn country. This was not about stopping cocaine. If that was, we would be going into Mexico. That's where the majority of the cocaine and the fentanyl comes from, is from Mexico. It doesn't come from Venezuela. They were just trying to lay the narrative groundwork so when they finally dropped bombs on Caracas and captured Maduro, they could say, well, we've been fighting the drug trafficking for months. This is just the next step of it all. So when they're actually talking about narco-terrorism, just know they were just testing the waters with a drone and a fishing boat. The drugs were never the threat. They were an excuse, and I'm going to break down why. Venezuela has the biggest oil reserves on earth. That's your whole story right there. And for years, the United States was locked out of them. First Chavez kicked the companies out, then Maduro kept it that way. No contracts, no profits, no access. But now that Maduro's been removed, Trump in his infinite wisdom, you can knock him all day long. I'm knocking him right here in this video, but he does have one very admirable quality. I don't know if he knows it or not. He does this on purpose, but he loves to say the quiet thing out loud. I've said this before on this channel. He comes out and he says, well, we're going to get the oil flowing just the way it should be. There's your answer right there. That's not no speculation. That's not a leak. That's not a spin. That's a direct quote from the president. United States oil companies will be moving in soon. Billions of dollars going to be lined up to rebuild the field, to restart production, and start pumping every last drop for American investees and oil refineries. So you can spin this as liberation, but it's not that at all. It's a flat-out heist. It's extraction with air support. U.S., ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips merger that started with a missile and the removal of the president. Another reason that we know this has nothing to do with drugs is because Trump just pardoned a literal convicted drug trafficker, not some random guy either. The former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who worked directly with the cartels, moved tons of cocaine to the United States and was slapped with 45 years in the federal penitentiary in the United States. And Trump let him go literally 3 weeks ago. Why? Because he's an ally of Trump, politically. And because fucking Honduras doesn't have any oil in the country. So apparently, drug trafficking is only a problem if your country has something worth stealing, if it's sitting on a big pile of crude. If not, you're good to go. You get a handshake and a limo ride on home. And of course, none of this was legal. There was no UN resolution. There was no vote in Congress. There was no international approval. And I will say, Trump is not the only president to do this. He's not exclusive. This happened to your favorite presidents on the other side. Biden, Obama, they're both war criminals. Obviously, George Bush and his old man, we know they are. Clinton, going all the way back to Reagan. Every president of my lifetime, and then add a couple of decades, is a war criminal to some degree. So this isn't just about Donald Trump, but this also isn't about diplomacy. This was a mob style asset grab. It had no legality to it. And now that Maduro's out, we're going to run the country in the meantime. Well, we'll take a walk down memory lane. We've done this before. We ran Iraq, we ran Afghanistan, we freed Libya and turned that into a Mad Max reboot. And now we're doing it again. Only this time we're going to package it together like a rescue mission. There's no plan to run this country. We have not even thought that far ahead. We just yanked the guy out of there and we're going to start drilling. But make no mistake, this is not help. This is, like I said, this is us installing oil executives into suits, and we're calling it stability. This is the exact playbook that Donald Trump ran against when he first ran in 2016, when he called out Jeb Bush and the Bush dynasty and was going after them, and Dick Cheney. This is what Dick Cheney did in Iraq. We concocted some story, we got America's support around it. We're going to take over Iraq. This is in the name of freedom. And really, all we did was just go in there and just steal every last drop of oil. Did not leave the country any better than it was before. And we're still dealing with turmoil over there 20 years later. So let's take one last look at the bigger picture here, because we bombed a country, captured its leader, and we're doing it all in the name of justice. Said it was about drugs, but we literally just pardoned a president of Honduras who was pushing drugs and was convicted in the United States for 45 years. We freed him 3 weeks ago. So this has nothing to do with drugs. Said it was about freedom, but immediately moved in to reopen the oil fields for American corporations. That's not freedom to me. That's how an empire works, and they're not even pretending anymore. You start talking about liberation, but you already know the playbook here. Bomb, blame, and loot. Smile for the cameras. If you like this video, if you like what I talk about on this channel, like and subscribe. And remember this, when they start talking about freedom, start asking yourself, who's profiting?